In this episode, we're going to talk about sustainable, responsible impact investing for nonprofits, why it makes sense for nonprofits to engage in SRI. This is the Impact Financial Planners podcast video blog with Bill Holliday, making sustainable, responsible impact investing easy for socially conscious investors who want to make a positive change through their investments. Impact Financial Planners is a fee-only financial planning firm specializing in sustainable, responsible impact investing at impactfinancialplanners.com. Thank you for joining me. I am recording another podcast during the coronavirus crisis or downturn. I am all alone in this pretty large office complex. There is some construction or some other noises you may hear, but I'm the only office worker here. So let me get started with this. I'm going to go through some reasons why it makes a lot of sense for nonprofits to incorporate, to further their cause through SRI, Sustainable Responsible Impact Investing. So it's a good fit. Sustainable Responsible Impact Investing is an investment strategy. They're seeking good returns, good financial returns, along with a good societal return, good for the society. Where can nonprofits apply SRI? And that's going to be through the workers' retirement plans, through foundation investments, and also through just their savings banking accounts. Instead of using a large global bank that funds migrant detention centers and fossil fuel extraction, you can use a local credit union. I mean, so some of them can be real easy changes. Here's an example. So you're an environmental nonprofit. It would be nice to have fossil fuel free investments, right? For the organization's funds and for its employees through their 403Bs or 401Ks. Investments, another option, not only avoid fossil fuel investments, but invest in investments that engage with companies to require disclosure of their environmental impact, their greenhouse gas emissions. Invest in renewable energy, so not only avoid, but include and engage. A border organization, you might not want to invest in private prisons and immigrant detention centers. SRI can be a good option that can align with beliefs for a synagogue, church, mosque. LGBT rights nonprofits, they might want to invest in companies or engage with companies to promote diverse boards of directors, pay equality, diversity policies. So you can further your nonprofit mission through your investments. Again, through the employees' savings, retirement savings, through the organization's investment funds. A lot of organizations will have a large investment for that they're taking distributions out of during each year, but that's growing and has a long time horizon. And then there is just the day-to-day accounts. You can make an impact with all of those. But if you're involved, not necessarily you're political because it's a nonprofit, but you're interested in politics, you may want your investments to advocate for disclosure of political spending by companies. Community development organizations, or anyone, you can get involved with investments for affordable housing, education projects, environmental sustainability, health, microfinance, sustainable agriculture, green projects. That's all part of SRI. You can use your investments to better society, to make more of an impact. I had another example. If you're involved with drunk driving, you might not want to invest in alcohol producing companies. So that's, you can align your investments with your mission statement, with your goals to further help that mission. What is SRI? ESG is another word for it, but it's socially responsible investing, sustainable responsible impact investing, environmental social governance investing, ethical investing, impact investing. These are all different names for the same thing. Faith investing, it's the same thing. Using your investments to make a change. Why would you engage? Well, It's a political tool. If you don't want just to leave it to the government to do it, make corporations responsible. As shareholders, you're an owner. You can engage with shareholders. You can engage with companies and make a change. You can do it, or the funds you invest in will do it, or your investment advisor, a pooled or a investment fund or an investment account. You can engage, whether it's individual companies and you're engaging with individual companies, or with funds that are aligned with your values. So if you have certain mission, you want to make sure that fund is aligned with it, whether it's focused on environment, whether it's focused on some religious slant. You can find a fund or find multiple funds because you want a diversified portfolio. So political, specific issues. If you care about some issue, diversity on boards of directors or payment rights or political contributions, those are issues that can be addressed through your investments. You can change companies. Religious beliefs, as with any of this, if you have a certain belief or mission or direction, funds, your investments can make an impact. SRI is growing faster than just normal investments. Actually, right now, it's about 26% of all managed investments engage in environmental social governance screening. It's pretty mainstream. It has grown really fast. Part of it's because there's more availability, there's better funds out there, lower expenses. We actually get funds, we use institutional class funds. So we get really competitive expenses. There are exchange traded funds that also have competitive expense ratios. Performance has also been great. Really, the last 5 years, since fossil fuels make up 10-11% of the S&P, and they've underperformed the market, SRI funds in general have really outperformed the market recently. At least they're keeping with the market. I don't know what the future holds for fossil fuels or for other industries, but if you look at the long track record, they're actually very competitive, outperforming now, but they're moving in sync, very in sync with standard indexes. So you're not sacrificing return. There's more information out there with companies' issues. I think people want to be more engaged. So this is what you hold. If you hold some index, an S&P 500 index, you're holding these companies: ExxonMobil, Chevron, Bank of America, Coke, Philip Morris, McDonald's, Walmart. If you don't want to hold, Weyerhaeuser, Monsanto, Northrop Grumman. If you don't want to hold these companies, you can't just be in a generic index. Halliburton, if you don't want these, you either need a fund that will filter these out, or you're buying individual stocks. Somehow it would be good to have them out of your portfolio. If you have a mission of helping the environment or of not producing weapons. So again, you can engage here. I'll show you how some of these work out. So there's different types of portfolios. You can just put some in SRI. You can do all SRI. You can look for a specific issue, only hold funds that are fossil fuel free. You can have a normal portfolio with indexes, and then also hold an investment in microcredit or in community investing. So there's not one portfolio for everyone. If you don't want everything moved to SRI, that's fine. You can do 90% the way you're always investing in low-cost indexes, and then just move a portion into SRI funds or a community investment. So here's the methods. These are the three pieces. There's screening, positive and negative screening, including or excluding companies. So with the environmental example, you'll exclude fossil fuels. You'll include alternative energy. Shareholder advocacy. You're an owner of the company. You can show up at the shareholder meetings. You can actually propose, a shareholder resolution. You can vote on the shareholder resolutions, especially for these ESG issues. If you hold a fund, you don't do any voting. It's no extra work for you, no extra work. You own a fund, or it's managed in an account of individual stocks. The fund manager will deal with it. Or if you own a mutual fund, that mutual fund will do all the shareholder advocacy, will do all the shareholder proxy voting. You don't have to do extra work with this. You can if you want. If you want to get in the weeds, great. You can have an account, separate account with individual stocks. Beautiful. You can get a fund manager who will help with that engagement. You can be involved in every detail of it. That's great, great, great. However you want to get involved, but it doesn't have to be any additional work. You just want to align that investment, that mutual fund, that fund manager. You want to make sure that their goals are aligned with your goals. So again, if it's environmental, hey, Green Century might be a good fit for one of your holdings. You want a diversified portfolio. You don't want to just hold large cap US companies. You want mid-size, small size. You want value, core, growth. You want international emerging, international developed. You want bond funds. You want long-term, short-term, intermediate term, higher, mid quality. You want a diversified portfolio. You can get it all with SRI, but it's going to be several different fund companies to pull together a nice portfolio. Community investing, that's the third component, and that is providing capital to organizations or people who otherwise might not have access to capital, and supporting good projects. So screening, excluding, restricting, or including. So you're including, you're looking at the industries, you're looking at the countries, you're looking at their corporate social responsibility, and that's helping to decide that filter. Even policies and practices, those will decide. So if you want exposure in a tech company, a medical tech company, not that you have to do the filtering, the fund will do the filtering, but they may look at, all right, we want exposure to this industry. Let's look at the most responsible of these companies. Of course, look at their performance, look at their growth. You're going to filter based on that. And you're also going to filter. It's an overlaying filter of here's a responsible company. Shareholder advocacy. How do you get engaged? So you can vote your proxies. What that means is if you don't show up at the shareholder meeting, they send you for individual stocks, they send you the issues that are up, the shareholder resolutions, and you get to vote. You're one of the shareholders, you're one of the owners, you get to vote. Again, if you're doing it through a fund, the fund will vote for you. Just make sure they're voting in line with your values. If it's a separately managed account, just make sure the account manager is in line with your value. You can write letters. They're going to listen to you. You're an owner. You can get a petition going. Yourstake.org does petitions. As a shareholder, you can engage or make sure your asset manager, mutual fund is engaging on your behalf. This is where you really make the difference. This engagement is where we push companies. Filing resolutions. So you can there's a couple hoops to jump through, but you can file a resolution for a company. And then in-person meetings and dialogues. And yes, a lot of these SRI funds will meet with a lot during the year. And you could find out how many does Domini or Calvert or Pax, how many meetings do they have a year? How many resolutions do they file a year? I know Portfolio 21 they filed about like 21 resolutions last year. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. And you file a resolution, and then if dialogue works out, you can pull the resolution. It doesn't have to go to a vote. And then if you just can't get anywhere, you just pull out. You don't hold that company. Again, if you do not vote, management votes for you. If you're in some non-SRI mutual fund, index fund, ETF, they're not going to vote on environmental, social, governance issues in general. Now, some of them have stepped up on climate change to do some engagement or some proxy voting. But when you compare the SRI funds to be doing a lot more engagement, they have dedicated staff for engagement. Funds will vote, file resolutions, be in dialogue about environmental, social, governance issues. Or your asset manager. You just want to make sure you're on top of this. Type of holdings. So of course, individual stocks, you can do it through your manager or yourself or through funds that are engaging. Here are some of the leading shareholder resolutions: political contributions, climate change, equal employment, animal welfare, sustainability, environment, global labor standards, human rights, board diversity, executive pay, community investing. So that's providing capital to low-income communities that otherwise would lack. So you can do community development banks. There are different loan funds. There are microfinance organizations. You can do this through mutual funds or exchange rate funds, or through the community investing notes. So this is just how you can get engaged. So there's, in general, so we're not talking about just community investing, just your portfolio can be made up of mutual funds. There's nothing more you need to do. Exchange traded funds, a mix of exchange traded funds and mutual funds, individual stocks that can be separately managed, can have an asset manager on them, and then community investment. There are notes that you could purchase, like a bond. You lend money, you say, hey, here's $5,000. You can have it for 5 years to invest on these community investment projects, whether it's education or affordable housing or microcredit, whatever the projects are, renewable energy projects. At the end, I'll get my money back, plus I'll be getting an interest every 6 months. They're competitive with CD interest rates. They're not, depending on the risk you take. I should take that back. Some of them do pay really high returns, but there's more risk involved. But in general, they'll be reasonable returns. The credit unions, community development financial institutions, such as credit unions. Again, there are some that have gone through the hoop to get this designation, and you can look up community development financial institutions and find credit unions or banks that meet that criteria. Or again, do a little research in your local credit unions. So mutual funds and ETFs, they have gotten competitive returns. They've actually outperformed the last few years in general over a general index because they're not holding fossil fuels, which have not done well. Shareholder advocacy. Generally, there will be an expense for the engagement. So if you have dedicated staff and you're filing a lot of resolutions, that expense may be a little higher. Now, again, we use institutional class shares, which are about a 0.5% lower expense ratio. The SRI funds are not going to be as cheap as some S&P 500 index that has 0.03 expense ratio. Yes, they're going to be higher. They could be 0.4, 0.5 for the institutional shares. They could be 0.7, 0.8 for non-institutional shares. But again, the total return, including that expense, has been competitive, but they don't have the volume of investors, and they're doing extra filtering, extra engagement, and that's why the expenses are going to be a little higher. But there's plenty of funds under 1%, plenty of funds that have an expense ratio under 0.5%. Examples of funds. So there's religious funds for all types of religions. There are alternative energy funds for all types of alternative energy. All right, there are funds that are focusing on different issues: workplace, women's equity, water fund, focused on the environment, focused on foreign, focused on small companies. Individual stocks, the advantage is there's no expense ratio. You can custom design your portfolio to meet your exact needs. You can vote the proxies, you can engage how you want. There are tools out there to help make voting easier. There are organizations like As You Sow that'll give you a list of these are some issues that are being addressed, that are up, that can help you with proxy voting. The disadvantage is actually the same as the advantages. It's just a lot of work. Now, you can get a portfolio manager to help, of course, but there's going to be fees for the manager. So the fees that you avoided with mutual funds, you've taken on a different way. But there's time and research and voting and engagement. You may be paying transaction fees, but not anymore. Most brokerage firms aren't charging transaction fees. Community investment. So here's some ways to invest. Community investments. Calvert Foundation's a great one. They engage in a lot of these different issues. Calvert Foundation's a great one. They're just like a bond. You give them some money for some term, they'll pay you interest, and then they'll return your money. RSF, similarly, that they work on projects, domestic projects. Calvert will do international. They'll give you some interest, and you're working on some nice. There actually are more of those out there these days. There's a lot of different options. Also, just looking at community development credit unions or banks, such as Hope Credit Union, Self-Help Credit Union. There's others out there. Even your local one, talk to them, that their mission is helping their members. They're member-owned, not corporate shareholder-owned. They're generally smaller, so they're not funding some big, prison system or fossil fuel project. Nonprofits, again, apply to their 401ks, 403bs, to the retirement plans. Get a plan that has SRI investment options. So you're not just limited to these indexes, or worse, some expensive managed mutual fund that has a high expense ratio, but is just investing in generic index holdings. With your funds that you're in, that you have, your foundation investments, your nonprofit investment fund, you can engage with shareholder advocacy and let those funds make a change. You're working so hard to make a change outside of those funds. Use those funds to also help make a change. Savings, just your regular day-to-day account. You can avoid using some global bank and use a community development financial institution. There's a lot of investment options. You're not needing to sacrifice returns. You can make an impact through screening, shareholder advocacy, and community investing. If you need support at all, reach out to us, impactfinancialplanners.com, also AIOfinancial.com. It's the same group here. We're fee-only advisors. We don't get commissions. We don't sell you any products. We're not trying to put you in an annuity or some insurance product. We're fiduciary. We're held to a fiduciary responsibility. We will help you meet your needs. We're comprehensive. We're independent, and you can reach out. Again, we offer a free upfront meeting. You can find information at our site, impactfinancialplanners.com. That's it. Please let me know if you have any questions, if you have any feedback. If you like these podcasts, if you like this channel, please subscribe. Please leave a comment. Please leave a rating so other people can find it. All right. Thanks a lot for listening.